Hi, my name is Kira, and today I'm going to be going over Chapter 18, the program design and technique for plyometric training. Specifically, I'm going to be going over the mechanical model and the neurophysiological model and the stretch elastic component, so the SEC. So the mechanical model is basically when you go quickly into an concentric motion, so a very quick just squeeze of the muscle. So if we're thinking about it, the example we're going to be referring back to throughout this is a long jumper. So if a long jumper were to be going into their concentric phase, their concentric phase would be them stepping down and their leg bending to be able to jump. So that initial step and right as soon as they hit the ground. There's also another phase called the amortization phase or the transitional phase. That's when they're completely planted on the floor. This phase may not last that long. It could be 0.1 of a second, or depending on what's being done, it could be longer. The problem with the amortization phase is if it lasts too long, all of the stored energy, which I'm going to talk about, all the energy from the concentric phase will be lost as heat. But if it's not lost, then they'll enter the eccentric phase. So specifically for a long jumper, that would be them extending that leg and pushing off and jumping away. So that would be their use of the energy, the release of it, and that would be their eccentric phase. So specifically in the mechanical model is all of the rapid, it's the rapid stretch of not just the muscles but the tendons. It's the rapid stretch of those tendons, and that is all the energy put into the limb because of that rapid stretch. So because of that rapid stretch, there's now energy within that muscle and tendon to be used in that from that concentric phase of the mechanical model. So when the movement is immediately followed by an eccentric phase, that energy will be released and it will be used as power, the push off. So the mechanical model shows the elastic energy of the tendons, which is increased by a rapid stretch and then stored within the muscle. But like I said, this energy, if stored too long, can be lost. So in this is the SEC, or the series elastic component. It's the workhorse of plyometric exercises because the SEC has multiple muscular components. It's majorly in the tendons. From the majority of the power provided is going to be made in that concentric phase, taken to the amortization phase, and sent to the eccentric phase, so the push off. Next, we have the neurophysiological model. So this one involves potentiation, which is the change in force velocity, which is caused by the stretch concentric muscle action used in the stretch reflex. So what was just used in the mechanical model, the stretch reflex, is also in the neurophysiological model, and it is the potentiation. So potentiation is basically how much energy have you gotten in that initial mechanical model with the concentric phase. From the mechanical model concentric phase, the potentiation is now in the neurophysiological model, which is basically how much energy have you gotten and how much can you do with that energy in the eccentric phase. So the stretch reflex is the body's involuntary response to external stimulus that stretches the muscles. So the stretch reflex is when the foot goes down and really bunches, that's the stretch reflex. So it's that quick movement. As in the mechanical model, if a concentric muscle action does not, like I've said, the amortization, if it doesn't immediately follow by a stretch, the potentiating ability of the stretch reflex is negated. So same thing in the neurophysiological model as in the mechanical model. If that amortization or transitional phase takes too long, it will be lost. So that energy cannot be stored long term. It is very short term, like in the long jump. They don't stay in that place for very long. Okay. So the importance of the stretch rate, it can be found with 3 different jump tests. No. So in the stretch shortening cycle, which involves the eccentric, the amortization, and the concentric. So the eccentric is phase 1, the amortization is phase 2, and the concentric is phase 3. That is the stretch shortening cycle, and that is what gives you that powerful land and push if we're still talking about the long jump. It can also be put into running, and that is every step you put down and move forward. It can be put into box jumps. It can be put into anything that involves a powerful, quick movement, because these are quick. So time can be given to each phase, but it will never be uniform on how much time is actually within those phases and how much time each person and each action is going to be spent within those phases. But if we're still talking about the long jump, so first we start with the eccentric phase. So that is the stretch of the agonist muscle. So again, if we're talking about that long jump, it's putting that foot down and that quadricep and all of those muscles within your legs stretching. So that is the pulling it apart like a spring, and that is building that energy. If we're talking about the neurophysiological, that potentiation is now growing. So phase 2 is the amortization phase or transitional phase. So that's a pause between phases 1 and 3. Not very long. So usually in this one, the afferent nerve synapses with alpha motor neurons, they are transmit signals to the agonist muscle, so the initial muscle, to basically say, you've been stretched, now you need to bring yourself back together. So phase 3 is the concentric phase. That is the shortening of the agonist muscle fibers. A lot of this has to do with the muscle fibers. So not just the muscle itself, but all of the smaller fibers within it. Those are what are being stretched and then pulled back together. And that's what normally happens, and that's what always happens when you use your muscles. They're being stretched and then they're being pulled together. But it depends on if that stretching is the worked part or if it's the reflex part. So usually if we're talking about, say, a bicep curl, it's already stretched because your arm is out. But that pulling it back up and bringing that muscle back to its original form is weighted. So that's what creates that effect. So if we're talking about, so the stretch shortening cycle combines the mechanical and neurophysiological models and mechanisms and is the basis for plyometric exercises. A rapid eccentric muscle stimulus stretches the muscle reflex and stores the elastic energy. Elastic energy is the energy that's made when it's rapidly stretched because it's elastic. It's going to stretch and then, like a spring, rapidly come back together. And that's why it's called the elastic energy. And when the elastic energy increases, the force produced during the concentric action is going to be more powerful. So the more powerful that stretch is, the more powerful the spring back is. So some exercises that can be normally weighted and referred to with power and strength rather than plyometrics can be made plyometrics. For example, squats. Squats can be made into squat jumps, which then have that stretch shortening cycle, and they're going to have that quick down. So like I've been saying with the jump, they're going to go down, stretch, and then they're going to spring up. You could also do push-ups. So plyometric push-ups are going to be, instead of just down and up in slow controlled manner, you're going to go down and up, and you're going to push off and jump your hands so they leave the floor and you have that stretch cycle. From the plyo push-ups, that is also a plyometric. That's why they're called plyo push-ups, because you get that jump and you get that quick movement. Plyometric push-ups are one of the ones that you focus on more speed and power and pushing off than you do strength, like other push-ups, which can be weighted or done in a variant that works muscles more slowly and in depth. Another one is the jerk. So the jerk is a quick movement of pushing the bar up, and you get a step to help get momentum for that push. So a jerk is a quick push up. That's why you get that momentum to do it. But that can be a variant of, say, a shoulder press, standing still and pressing the bar straight up in a slow and controlled manner. So the jerk and shoulder press are the differences between plyometrics and strength. Another one is lunges. Just like with the squat, you can add a jump onto this and actually alternate which leg is forward, and that will make it plyometrics, and it'll work on your coordination alongside of that. So that is chapter 18. That is our program design and technique for plyometric training. Thank you.